Hello. Welcome to Be Well. I'm Jonathan from Your Y, and I'm honored to bring you these conversations with leaders in their field related to living a mindful life. As your moderator, I come to you with 30 plus years experience in mental health, mindfulness, and wellness. I want to offer you, related to our topic, uh, a quote by John Muir, the naturalist, the writer, the philosopher, relative to our conversation. Quote unquote, thousands of tired, nerve shaken, over civilized people are beginning to find out going to the mountains is going home, that wilderness is a necessity. And so today we're going to have an opportunity to be bathed in beauty. It's always available to us. I'm honored to have Rana Kozak with us. Rana is a eco-psychologist. She's been a guide at the San Diego Botanical Garden and an expert in forest and nature bathing. I originally had not heard of forest bathing. I know it's come out of Japan, but Rana, tell us a little bit about, first off, your background and what is forest and nature bathing?
Well, my background, Jonathan, is really always been with the natural world. I started out in my youth as a florist. I had my own boutique. I was very involved in that. I went on and studied herbalism and natural healing and ended with about 12 years in a holistic health spa that did all nature-based treatments from around the world, from using herbs from Thailand, water therapies from France, and just in general, connecting people to their own health through nature. After that chapter, I became very fascinated with this trend towards reconnecting with nature. And I saw something about forest bathing. And having studied floristry in Japan, it kind of resonated with me. And they were doing a program at the Morton Arboretum in Chicago. And I signed up for it. It was the fifth nature.
Rana, I think you got muted there somehow.
Okay.
So you're good. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I studied forest bathing at the Morton Arboretum in Chicago, and it resonated with me because of my prior experience in Japan. And when I went to that, I really became so aware of the fact that people were walking through the natural world, but it was always a background. They weren't really engaging in it. Very few people do. There are some people that are very devoted to that and teach it, but they're in the minority. So when I first started talking about forest bathing here in San Diego, people were like, what? You take off your clothes? What are you doing out there? And it is because the concept of bathing is really an Asian concept. The bath, the hot springs are part of that world, and they understand it that way. Here in the US, we don't really get it. So I always say to people, well, imagine this. You're in a forest and you put your yoga mat or a blanket down on the floor of the forest and then you lay down. You have a different view, you pick up different fragrances, you have a different feeling in your body. That is a type of immersion, and that's what we mean by bathing.
I love that. I'm thinking of, San Diego. We're so fortunate to have nature all around us,
Yes.
especially with taking on this pandemic and how best to truly be well in the environment that we're in right now with the virus and whatnot, and being outdoors and being able to connect with nature is so important. I remember when I did a workshop in Arizona. It was a mindfulness type retreat, and we were in silence, and we went to the Grand Canyon. How expansive that experience was. But to your earlier point, I had heard the research that people travel from all over to go to the Grand Canyon, but when they actually get there, they most of us take pictures of it, and within 5 minutes move on. versus, as you speak to, the whole idea of immersing ourselves in the experience. So share with us a little bit about how one goes about practicing.
When if you can set aside your thoughts and go into nature and allow yourself to move in a way that you're attracted to something, you explore it. Instead of going through with a real set agenda, you become more fluid and see what's there for you because it's different for everyone. One of my favorite practices, and I think this is true of most forest bathers and guides, is that once you get into the area where you're going to be, which we recommend that it be safe and quiet, not a lot of cars, where you really can let go, you tune in to the sensation. What's the temperature on your skin? What do you hear near and far? How does it feel to have your feet on the ground? What colors are you seeing? And if you just even stop and look at the colors, it goes on and on. And then closing your eyes and really getting a sensation of connection to the earth. And when you open your eyes, this is one of our favorite practices, techniques. Just notice everything that's moving. And that alone will lower your blood pressure, take you into a more sensitive perception of what's going on around you, and things start to open up. It's amazing what happens. You can be walking by a tree and it just looks like a tree, and then all of a sudden you stop to look at what's moving, and then you notice the leaves are kind of moving this way and that. And then all of a sudden there's 100 bees that you didn't notice. And it just allows you to go deeper into the experience of the natural world. So that's pretty much a good place to start for people.
And what I hear you saying, Rana, is really having a curiosity, kind of almost like that child's mind of seeing it for the first time as you
Very
open
much so.
that particular experience. So a lot of us type A people would say, well, how much time do I need to be able to get the benefits of forest bathing or nature bathing? Can I do it in a few minutes? I can fit it in. So if you could quantify how much do we need to lend ourselves to the experience just from a time perspective?
The studies that were done in Japan were really interesting because they put people in a natural environment for 2 hours. And in that 2 hours, they had these significant physiological changes. The blood pressure lowered, the natural killer cells that represent the health of your immune system increased, blood sugar went down, heart rate variability improved. And this is in 2 hours. And they collected all this data. And then they put people, back into their normal lives, and they kept rechecking, and they found that this 2 hour session would last nearly a month.
Wow.
Yes, that's pretty amazing.
It
Now,
is.
at Stanford, they did another interesting study. It was 90 minutes of being in a natural setting and walking and just slowly being there and observing and experiencing and literally bathing. And what they found is that the tendency for rumination, where you have the same thought over and over again, that just completely abated. There's a sense of timelessness that occurs in the natural world when you're there and you're available. And it's hard for people, type A people, to say, oh, I'm not going to be watching my watch. I'm not going to answer my phone. But it becomes kind of a really addictive and attractive because you feel the difference. And a type A person, which usually is someone who's trying to solve problems and deal with putting out fires or whatever they're doing, when they go out there, they often set aside any of the negative thought, and fresh thought comes in that helps facilitate problem solving. And we know that to be true. It also helps people with their creativity. So if you said to yourself, well, if I could do once a week, 90 minutes, that would be great. And maybe just in the interim, every day, even 5 or 10 minutes,
Okay.
because like you said, we live in this beautiful atmosphere here in San Diego, but even other places, they find a park, they find a favorite tree, that they can watch go through the seasons. So It really depends on the person and how much you're willing to give yourself to be well.
What I like about what you're sharing is, so you can do it anywhere.
Yes.
And also, it isn't like a cumbersome protocol and process. It's really just being present, being mindful. And I think about, some of the meditations that I enjoy doing is just listening to the sounds of nature, hearing
Yes.
the birds and hearing the leaves rustle. So, what about emotional benefits that one might get from nature bathing? I think of like the grounding, imaging, seeing the trees in the forest and the root system into the ground, and how just the imagery of that and experience is so grounding. But what other kind of emotional benefits might there be?
Well, I like what you just said. It's true, that sense of rootedness. And if you can be in nature in that way where you really observe and sense into that feeling, it shifts how you feel. You feel like you belong. You're part of this. That's a big emotional boost. When you might be facing something in life that's a challenge, that I can go out and do this, and it feels it's empowering because it is something you can do for yourself. And that's a very big emotional boost. It's just natural, right? Because the worst part of any kind of problem is feeling like there's nothing you can do. That's, that's just a dead end. And
Yeah.
it has to rely on somebody else. So just, this is the path I walk. This is where I go. These are the plants that I focus on. That in itself just brings you to a different place as far as your own healing and wellness.
I think about, we're often having to self quarantine right now and isolate. So some of us might be more tentative about going outside, leaving our house. Are there activities that we can do from home, in our backyard, or in our house that lend itself to nature bathing?
Well, there's a lot of ways to connect with nature that you can do inside. Perhaps you do it through your cooking. Perhaps you have plants inside. Maybe you do flower arranging. Maybe you work with aromatherapies and all of that. However, when you go outside and you're under the sky, whether it's your backyard or some other wonderful place, there's this whole other thing that takes place. And one of the things is that plants are constantly emitting biochemicals. We
Mhm.
don't always perceive them, but they're there. And this is one of the things that came out of that work in Japan, is they tracked the terpenes, which are volatile organic compounds. You usually can perceive them coming off the trees. And that biochemical is medicine for the tree because it helps their immune system. These fragrances attract pollinators, they repel pests, but those actually affect us as well in a positive way. And how they determined that was they took the essence of the Hinoki cypress, which is where this whole thing started, and they put people in these hotel rooms and they pumped in the Hinoki cypress, and what they found is that they were getting some of these physiological shifts just from the fragrance and the input of this biochemical. What they also found is that when you're out in nature though, you know, where the currents and the air flows, where the leaves move, where everything is happening, there's an entourage effect. It's just not trying to isolate one sound or one fragrance. It's the entourage effect of being out in that world. So, yes, after this pandemic, what we have seen, one thing in real estate is that people, especially people with young families, are seeking properties with some outdoor space
Yeah.
because they realized and did realize through this that to have children all the time inside four walls and a ceiling is not healthy for them and it's not healthy for their parents. And just to have something accessible that's on the ground, that there's soil, that there's sky, clouds, this is really important going forward. It's necessary for our health.
I really identify with the term of the entourage effect, because it's the multiplicity of all those different senses and experiences that come to play. And you don't necessarily want to just stay with, I'm going to smell this, or I'm going to look at that. It's like it all happens sensory at one point in time. It was also interesting. I hadn't thought of it previous to our conversation, the whole idea of the different sense of nature. And I know, like, I really enjoy aromatherapy in the sense of having a particular scent in a room, and just how that emits certain memories or transports you to certain experiences that you've had, whether you smell a cypress or a juniper, a pine tree scent, and it takes you to those different places. So I really like that. It was interesting too. I read an article, Rana, just in the last day or two, how they're developing plants to actually take the carbon out of the atmosphere. And so nature is coming to play in a lot of different ways to foster our health and well-being. So tell me some of your favorite places that we can maybe explore for nature bathing, forest bathing in our community here.
Okay. Well, where I started the program to do this in a formal way was at the San Diego Botanic Garden. And I created this path because the secret to this is to not have to worry about where you are. You're not looking over your shoulder. You want to have a sense of safety. You do not want to have a dangerous kind of path to really get started in this, because you want to feel very comfortable. So in that garden, though, there are several, I mean, there's amazing places that you can literally bathe in your senses. One, people would find this a little funny at first, but the bamboo gives off more oxygen than any other plant. And there's a beautiful bamboo forest at the Botanic Garden. It has over 100 species. And you really get in there and you hear the sound of the bamboo clicking together in the wind. And I always suggested people either sit or literally toss out a yoga mat and lay down where you have that up perspective of the bamboo. And, you know, people came out of that experience. Really, it was just such a great meditation and a great sense of belonging and a great sense of comfort, like you're being cradled in the earth. That some people would say that. And there was this wonderful letting go. So that's one of my favorite places in the garden. And the other place that I love there is the herb garden. It's kind of a low-key herb garden, but I've taught so many people how to go around and just gently touch the leaves and bring them to you so you can start to pick up the terpenes and really get a sensation of it. Because many people walk through nature and they never touch anything. It's almost like they're afraid to touch it, because I don't know. I mean, there are some things you might get a little sap or something, but it's probably not going to do you in. Anyway, I really think it's important to go to places where you can engage, you can touch, you can smell, you can, move your arms through it. And then another place that's really great here is the San Diego Park in Solana Beach, because although there's a lot of open grass, there are many paths that go through, what we would be the indigenous native plant areas. And I happened to be there this morning, and it's a lot of moisture. So the eucalyptus fragrances and just everything just felt so, earthy because of the fragrance, because of the moisture in the air, the cool in the air. That's another very favorite place. And then, of course, we have miles of beach. And even though there's no forest there, for nature bathing on our, we're so blessed here, right? On a low tide, the beach goes on forever. And really, you get the ocean air, you get the sound, you get the feel of the sand, the sun. And it's a place where letting go and opening up to other sensations, like the sense of awe, the sense of gratitude, the sense of play. There are many other senses that we as humans feel that go beyond our five senses. So those would be some of my top recommendations. And if you're down south, Balboa Park has some beautiful areas in it.
Wow. You highlighted some wonderful ones. I love the beach, love San Diego Park. I apologize for not knowing, but where is the San Diego Botanical Garden? Is that the one that's Quail Gardens, or where is?
Yes, it was at one time Quail Garden, but they changed the name probably 10, 12 years ago. And
Right.
it's right there off of, well, it's Quail Drive. The entrance is right there by the Heritage Museum. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's, so you, if you're, I mean, I have to put in a plug, the membership is really inexpensive and that gives you free access to it at any time. And it's a marvelous area to walk. And then the gardeners there are doing a lot of conservation. So that's another way of connecting with nature is to, delve into the horticulture of everything, conservation.
I just think, living in San Diego, we're so fortunate to have everything around us. I think of even at night when I take my little puppy outside to go to the bathroom, just walking out in the dark and seeing the stars and the breeze, and just in that moment, just connecting, because it just seems to kind of bring any kind of stress, uh, just drops things for it, because you're in that moment and you're connected to nature and the grandness and the awe of it. So we are truly fortunate in that way. You had shared with me before something about plant intelligence, and so if you could say something about that.
Sure. Well, for a long time, you couldn't use the two words in a sentence together, plant and intelligence. That
Yes.
was forbidden. But in recent years, especially in the last 10 years, I mean, now we know about the root systems, their intelligence in the root systems, that they create ecosystems not only for that plant, but all the plants around them. That is a type of intelligence. And when you think about intelligence, think of it from a sensory perspective. Your intelligence is informed by your ability to perceive through your senses. And there's a wonderful book called What a Plant Knows. David Shamowitz wrote it, and they go through all the more recent discoveries about plants, how they see light, they see color of light. If you're wearing blue or green, that plants actually perceive you in the environment. They know the direction of light, the duration of light.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, so there's this, all this is going on all the time. And one really interesting thing, even Darwin figured this out. When you think of trees just kind of standing there, they're actually moving. They're circumnavigating at all times. And they couldn't understand, nobody's really figured out why that happens. So they put some plants on the Apollo, and the plant, the little Arabidopsis is the common plant that's used for research, continued to do this circumnavigation even in space. Not to the same degree, but plants have more awareness than we often realize. So for instance, there's the trees that in Africa that the giraffes eat, and when they've gotten 20% into it, the tree literally changes its biochemistry so that
Wow.
it's no longer appealing to the giraffe. And not only that, it messages all of the other trees that they all change their chemistry in that particular stand. Just say they're communicating all the time.
Fascinating. So I know we talked about a little experience, how you can maybe give us a hit of nature bathing.
Yes. Well, I don't know if we have anybody who's outside or even near a window for this, but I would just suggest that you close your eyes and then uh, start by sensing the temperature on your skin. Wiggle your toes and feel your feet connected to the earth. Begin to listen to everything near and far, even listening to the sound of your own breath, to the birds if you can hear them outside, or whatever you're hearing. And if you can, imagine where the nearest body of natural water is to you in relationship in geography. And then kind of go to that 60,000 foot level and see yourself where you are on this beautiful planet. And notice any fragrances Notice any flavors. And when you are ready, open your eyes and look at life and the world around you as if you've never really seen it before. And see if there's something, if you have a view of the natural world that really attracts you in this moment. Like, for instance, I'm looking out at some bamboo and I see the light in the leaves. And find that place in yourself where you can really connect with the nourishment within that, because it's there for you. And what's there for you is unique to you. It's something about, just appreciating the gift of being in the natural world right now.
That's beautiful. I have a garden here at the YMCA right outside my office, and we get hummingbirds and butterflies, and there's new growth. I see a yellow pepper that has just sprouted. So thank you for guiding us in that way. My last query to you would be, what would be our call to action? What should we take away and look at enacting in our life after our conversation?
First, don't let nature become a backdrop, and don't let it become a screensaver. Really take the time to experience it in ways that are meaningful for you. So when you see the hummingbird, really pause and see the hummingbird. Maybe sense into the feeling of that bird and how its wings move. See if you can hear it. And the same with a butterfly. We just don't pass things by, because this is it right now. Whatever is coming to you in that moment is something special, and it's worth really experiencing the treasures there for you.
That's wonderful. I'm going to close with just a quote from Walt Whitman. Now I see the secret of making the best person. It is to grow in the open air and to eat and sleep with the earth. Rana, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us and offering us an experience. Please feel free to reach out to Rana in the chat. There's some resources that you provided for us, and her website is posted. Thank you, Rana, and thank you all for joining us today. Until our next conversation, hope everyone is being well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.